Good evening, everybody. I have a confession to make. I'm not a designer. I'm sorry. I have a master's degree in painting, actually, from MICA, and I delivered my thesis talk in this room, so I have really fond memories of being here. But at that time, I really had no idea. I had absolutely no clue, and really not until I have worked very intimately and intensely with two of the three panelists that you will hear from tonight. I did not realize that graphic design was a superpower. So, can I see a show of hands? How many of you are designers? Yes. Round of applause. You people are amazing, and I get to witness it firsthand every day. And in a way, it's unfair because, and we can talk about this, but I feel like you know when design is really good when you don't notice it so much. So in a way, it's like this invisible and practical art. But to quote one of the three panelists here, graphic design is art that you actually use. It's useful, it's usable, and that is just such an incredible power and privilege. So I hope you feel seen in that power. I am your fan. So tonight we're going to talk with three graphic designers who specialize in books and publications. So books are also a superpower. They are magical. So first of all, I want to introduce Ellen Lupton, who has authored and co-authored numerous books about graphic design, including Design is Storytelling, Graphic Design Thinking, Health Design Thinking, and Extra Bold, a feminist, inclusive, anti-racist, non-binary field guide for graphic designers. Ellen's latest book is Thinking with Type, 3rd edition. She teaches in the Graphic Design MFA program at MICA, where she serves as the Betty Cook and William O. Steinmetz Design Chair. So she is Curator Emerita at Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian Design Museum in New York City, and her exhibitions included Herbert Bayer, Bauhaus Master, and The Senses, Design Beyond Vision. And forgive me, I did not memorize their bios, but they're all fantastic. So Tony Venne, hiding in the corner. Tony Venne is the head of design at the Walters Art Museum, and he is the publication designer for BmoreArt's print journal of art and ideas. For the past 15 years, he has taught graphic design and publication design at MICA, and before relocating to Baltimore in 2007, Tony worked as an art director for Target and as a designer for Tiger Oak Publications. Tony holds a bachelor's degree from the University of Wisconsin-Stout and an MFA in graphic design from MICA. Woo! So yeah, and he has informed me that in our 10 years of working together on this publication, there may be some slides that are personally embarrassing to me. So I hope you all look forward to that. Last but not least, Raquel Castedo is a Brazilian graphic designer, educator, and researcher based in Baltimore, Maryland. She received her PhD in communication and information from the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, Brazil. Her research includes Latin American design histories and book design. From 2019 to 2023, she served as a board member for both Society of Design Arts, or SODA, and AIGA Baltimore, where she created the Latino Design History Speaker Series. Raquel teaches book design in the Hofberger School of Painting MFA program at MICA, and she is BmoreArt's creative director, focusing on branding and special publications. I'm going to hand it over to these three. They're going to each do a short presentation about their work, and then the three of us are going to talk, and then if you have questions, we'll ask them. There are wonderful booksellers outside this room from the Ivy and AIGA, so I hope you peruse our beautiful publications after this.
Thanks, Cara, that was so cool. So every Tuesday I teach in this very room, and a lot of my students are here, so thanks for coming. And tonight it's, very special to welcome the Baltimore and Washington area graphic design community. Where's my slide? Here we go. I have written a lot of books, like over 30, and no big deal. And people often ask me, well, how do you do that? And it's like, one part is easy, is starting, and finishing is easy. It's the part in the middle. So I can't tell you how many, coffee dates I've had with people with an idea for a book. And the ideas are all amazing, but you have to actually write the book. So, yeah, not bad. Did that. But what do you do first? I always start, it may seem obvious, but I always start with the table of contents. And a table of contents, when I write a proposal for a publisher, that's always something that I include, is a table of contents. Which is not an index. Like an index is like what you actually wrote, like granular. But a table of contents is like a map of the structure of your book. So this is a great book by Ruben Pater, and the only part of it that I've ever actually read is the table of contents. And it's like, if you read this table of contents, you actually get the entire thesis and theory of the book, which is that graphic design and capitalism depend upon each other. And I just think it's absolutely beautiful and a kind of summary of what's going to happen inside the book. So I wrote a table of contents for my 10 minutes of fame up here, and I'm just going to give you 4 tips. If you are an artist making a book about your work, or a graphic designer working with clients, or someone who just wants to write a book, I'm going to give you 4 things that you have to do. Okay, we just did one of them, which is the table of contents. And here's my favorite table of contents from one of my books. This is from Design is Storytelling. And I decided to structure it in 3 acts, like a TV show or a play. And I really enjoyed that, and by creating that structure, it allowed me to build that storytelling theme right into the book from literally the first page. And then the divider pages are like a black curtain coming down between acts. And instead of an introduction, I wrote an overture. Because once you get a metaphor going, you just got to beat it to death. So that's one of my books. And most of my books, I am the author and the designer. Sometimes I'm the editor, and I'm working with lots of different contributors, but I'm putting it together and orchestrating the whole flow of things. And so when I create a book, and I believe when you create a book, to really think about it as spreads. So like, no one is ever gonna read your whole book. Not even your mother, especially not your mother. Okay, she's got other things to do. People will flip through your book. They will jump in anywhere. If they're left-handed like me, they'll start from the back of the book. So every book that I have ever created is designed so that wherever you open it, it's going to make sense. I never use the phrase, as I said earlier, because I just assumed that nobody read anything up until that moment. Okay. So thinking about a book in relation to dive in anywhere, open me anywhere, leave when you feel like it. that's my philosophy of putting together a book. Again, I'm the author and the designer often, so I can totally control that and have my word count work out perfectly, so that nothing ever spills over onto an extra page, which would be terrible. So here's some spreads from Design is Storytelling. My other philosophy is to always picture your reader. Sometimes when we're writing a book, we imagine the reader is us, but actually it's not, and your reader knows lots of things that you don't know, and they don't know all the things that you know. So I'm always picturing my reader. I'm often picturing my own students, young people who come from all over the world and all different backgrounds, and who maybe they know what the Bauhaus is, but they don't know some obscure Swiss guy from 1966. So we don't presume that everybody has the same vocabulary. And so that means writing in an inclusive, simple, direct way that respects your reader always. So this is the cover of my book, Extra Bold, which was a huge group effort involving 7 co-authors and dozens of contributors. And as you can see, it's written in spreads. And anywhere you open it up, it makes sense. And in putting this book together, which has a mix of theory and history and like practical work advice, it was really important to me, there's my amazing co-authors, to understand that some people love to read. That's me. I love linear communication. I love reading from A to B. And some people are more interested in pictures and find that more accessible. So throughout this whole book, the content is presented both visually and through formal but accessible text. So this is about wage gaps as a graphic design principle. Or this is a chapter on intersectionality, which is quite a theoretical idea created by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw. And her idea about the intersection of racism and sexism and the impact of that on people's lives is actually based on a metaphor of somebody standing in the intersection of traffic coming in multiple directions. And when we read this essay, I was like, wow, that's like a visual picture that makes the theory much more understandable. So here's this illustration by Jennifer Tobias of the intersection of diverse forces that can affect somebody in their identity and their success in society. And you come up close and there's little stories and jokes and anecdotes about life, modern life. And then finally, the last thing you should design is the cover. And some people want to do that first, and like picturing the cover is like their favorite thing on earth. But actually you want to wait and do that when you really know what the book is about. And if you have a commercial publisher, they will be super involved, and you'll have to do 20 different covers, and it's a project unto itself. So my most recent book is the 3rd edition of Thinking with Type. The 1st edition I wrote in 2004. I was a faculty member here at MICA. I wrote it for my students because I was teaching undergraduate typography and felt like there wasn't a book quite like what I wanted. So I wrote it, and it's been a very successful book since then and has come out in several editions. And as we issue new editions, we want the cover to relate to the history of it, because it's a recognizable book with a strong following around the world. But we also want each cover to feel different. This is the 3rd edition, which is bigger, longer, more stuff, more fonts, more voices. It's more global, it's less judgy. And I really wanted the cover to not just be a different color, but to really signal that this was a book that had been rethought every single page. So here's the old cover, and it has this border around the edge, which comes from like a 19th century newspaper ad. And I always liked the texture of like uppercase and lowercase, and I like that little E for Ellen up in the corner. So to make the new edition, which has a much more international and inclusive philosophy of type in it, I asked my amazing daughter, Ruby Miller, to create a collage that would indicate more voices, more fonts, more languages, more points of view. So that's this beautiful handmade collage that she created that becomes the edge around the cover. But it also matters, like when you open the cover, when you open the book, I wanted that message of openness too. So this is the second edition, and when you open it, the inside cover has this list of fonts, which is super useful for students to have a list of typefaces that are known to be good, that have historical pedigree, that are high quality typefaces. But when I look at that, I'm like, you know what this is? This is a canon. This is a fixed list. And most of these typefaces existed when I was a student, and these were the typefaces I was told were good and acceptable to use. All of them are the Latin alphabet. All but one of them is designed by men, and all the designers are white. So doing a new edition, I'm like, this is not okay, and how can we signal the idea of openness from the moment you open the book? So that beautiful collage opens. Yeah, right? And so here we have a picture of typography that looks like there's not room to contain it, as opposed to a canon. Big, typography is big, it's everywhere, it's for everyone. And here's a little flip through the book. All written in spreads. Anywhere you open it, it will make sense and have something for you to learn and enjoy about typography. So thank you very much, and Tony's going to be the next speaker.
Hi.
Hi.
So I've titled my talk Towards a Collaborative Design Process, mostly because, like, as a designer, I'm sort of used to working by myself on a magazine or a book, and never really working together so closely. You'll get the content and the images and kind of put the thing together. But BmoreArt sort of never really started out that way. This is a photo of our first team meeting at the bun shop back in 2014. I'm on the left with a sort of grumpy looking face. Cara's there in the middle. Cara, if you haven't met her yet, she's the publisher, as you heard already. And to her side is Kelvin Bullock, one of our longtime collaborators. We're here sort of evaluating images for the first time, and this is the first time I sort of like felt this like change in the collaborative nature of BmoreArt. One of the other things that I found really important in collaboration and sort of starting this project was really sharing and teaching each other about what we know. Like Cara came with a pretty extensive knowledge of the arts community in Baltimore. And I brought some print experience to this. So this is a shot of Cara at our first press check. They're out at Schmidt's Press up in Hunt Valley, wonderful printers. Highly recommend them. We're also started expanding these collaborative efforts, and we began to work together with photographers in different ways. We didn't. Usually when I worked, say, like a Target, we would hire a photographer, they would shoot everything, and we'd get all the images back, and we wouldn't really get input during the shoot as to what we were getting, so you'd go through hundreds and hundreds of photos. A lot of the collaborators we have, this is Brady Robinson, another collaborator of ours. We sat together and we work with them frequently to sort of do the photo shoots together, give a little art direction, and kind of envision and plan through these things as we're working. And another thing that I was never used to, but Cara sort of came into, was just doing the proofing process with me. We walked through color. I taught her a little bit about printing and proofing materials, and she's got a sharp eye now. She's ready. This is a photo of her, and during the pandemic, we were doing proofing out on my my back deck in the cold.
Yeah, we don't usually do it outside.
What I wanted is, I followed Ellen. I was a student of Ellen, so I know all about the table of contents. So I have the three divider pages in my presentation. So the first page in my presentation is a little behind the scenes about how we developed the creative process, our collaborative process at BmoreArt. The first issue of BmoreArt, really you saw the photo with Calvin. I was sort of given the photos. We sort of put the magazine together, and I was like, okay, well, maybe this will go somewhere, I don't know. We sort of worked a little bit collaboratively, not too much, and I think we had some success with the first one. And Cara was like, well, we should do more of this, like working with other people together. So like, what do you think you want to do? Like, I have these ideas to do, like documenting and recording like artists' materials, and we were both sort of a fan of like very neatly laid out objects. Knolling, if anybody knows. So we engaged 4 different artists in Baltimore: Sebastian Margarana, Amy Boone-McCreesh, April Camlin, and Yoshi Fuji. And we went into their studios with Baltimore photographer Joe Hyde, and started photographing in their studios their materials to make their art. They were really open to it. Sebastian let us put his beautiful marble sculpture on the floor just so that we could get a great photo of that beautiful white marble on the yellow caution section of Hillgardner stone. Amy let Cara just go into her tote bin of materials and just pick out the things that she wanted to use for her beautiful collage installations. And they ended up with this really nice result. We paired the artwork with the tools the artists were using. We also started expanding that idea of what materials were. We collaborated again with another photographer, Jill Fannin, another longtime collaborator. And we wanted to document artists that maybe did more like apparel or fashion, or more like three-dimensional work that was for the body. And the funny thing about this was, like, I think a few of us didn't really have a lot of like fashion photography like experience. So we kind of went in and we're like, oh, I think you put a backdrop down, and I think you put some lights up, and like everybody was very gifted and talented in their like what they brought to the table, but we never really like worked in this sort of way before. So this is us sort of like feeling our way through a fashion shoot. To the left is Maria Chavez, a former MICA person, and Will Grimm is the artist in the center, and I don't recall the artist in the right.
Mark
But-
Corridor is wearing his gown, or his coat.
Thank you. So this was the results that we came up with, these beautiful black and white photos in the stark white background. The artist is David Page on the left, and the center is Will Grimm, the artist, and then Patricia Chavez on the right. During the pandemic, we had a bit of an issue trying to come up with some content, so we started like trying to think about what was familiar for us. I recall if this was the first where Cara was really interested in like what artists were wearing during the pandemic, and her and I have a lot of discussions about food and what we're eating all the time and what's new to go get to eat. And so we're just like, well, let's just do a takeout photo shoot. Like, let's get some takeout food, and we'll put a photo shoot together. And using some of the techniques we had learned from that artist materials shoot, we started photographing our favorite takeout places. So I don't remember what.
So it was the comfort issue, but we were
Yes.
trying to imagine what comfort food looks like during a pandemic. And also just trying to support restaurants.
Yeah,
They were
yeah.
really struggling.
So yeah, as Cara said, like, so we, again, none of us had really done a lot of this like food photography before, so we're like, I think you put it on this thing, you went and got food. I know that normally you would make the food look really fake, so we were just trying to do our best with the materials that we had. I also sort of got obsessed with photographing the foil that was used to wrap up the food. So the results turned out to being this really beautiful suggested imagery of the foil, and then to the right, Brady's beautiful photograph of this takeout from Black Sauce, I believe. This is
Yep.
Black Sauce, yeah.
Yep.
Again, we're also started expanding what it meant to photograph like materials or think artists' inspiration. This is a behind the scenes shot of artist Ben Kelly. His house is a small museum. He's obsessed with collecting photographs and stamps and seashells with his partner Morgan Kempthorne. So we went in and photographed his entire upstairs house, and really got some amazing photographs of that. So let's see where we're at. Another thing that that I sort of like encountered during our development of BmoreArt was during one of the photo shoots that we had shown earlier of us going to the artist studios with the materials, Cara was like, hey, do you want to go stop by my friend Renee's house? They're doing a photo shoot of his house. We were thinking about featuring it for the next issue. So we stopped in and I was like, oh, this is amazing. Renee and Paul have all this beautiful like local artwork, and this is great. And then we began to lay this out, and Cara's like, well, we have to credit all of the artists, which I didn't really account for when I designed the magazine in the first issue. Like I really was in, like I didn't know what to do with all these names. It wasn't something that we really discussed.
But you're not the one getting yelled at.
So, but what was nice about this is, and the reason why I titled this slide, How Publications Learn, is because the publication grid had to change as we developed the magazine and continued to change. You'll see, and this is an uncommon thing that we came up with in BmoreArt, was that the folio numbers had been moved to the center spread, and it's not something that you see typically in books as a navigation tool. And I kind of did that originally as a sort of like, oh, isn't this cool to do that thing that's a little bit different? But it ended up being to our advantage because we needed a lot of room for these captioning. So again, we continue this idea of the featuring people living with art. And this was one of our longest captions I could just find, which is, this is Aaron Fostel and Ryan Dorsey's house. They collect a lot of local art and national art. So we, again, the publication had to learn how to deal with these sort of long captions. And I think we even grew further from just the artist names to including the artist names and the titles and the years that they were made. So it's really quite nice, and it's, again, this sort of like speaks a little bit to this collaborative nature of BmoreArt and the community collaboration that we're creating here. And then we moved on from like art, and we started including more and more people. So these captions had to grow to squeeze in as many people into our magazine. You'll see this is the Still Point Theater group. There was Justin Chikalis had crammed into the Club Charles to do our artist photo shoots. And again, as we continue to expand, this is issue 11, we started to include not only people and art, but also pets. And so again, the collaboration began to grow from people and art and things to non-human things, and we even I love this spread because it really speaks to like how far we've come. This is the upper left is a feature on Uni Hogan, the First Lady of Maryland at the time. So our last thing that we do for every issue is create the covers. So this is a sort of smattering of our first 4 issues, where we were taking a lot of the photos that we had planned or we'd used, and some of them had been planned out, and some of them were just handed over from the photography artists making them. And so these were all the sort of rejects that we had.
Can you tell whose mustache that is? John Waters. Yes! John Waters' mustache. Oh, these are good. Why didn't we use them?
We have them still, so we can pull them out.
Laura Jabul.
Yeah.
The big sunglasses. And then that's a block, that's just a slab of clay from the Clay Works.
So, we'll go down memory lane later during the panel discussion.
Do something with all the X covers. Sorry.
So that's okay. We around this time, I think if anybody doesn't know, this is Amy Sherrill. She's now an internationally famous artist from Baltimore, a MICA graduate, who was commissioned to do the Michelle Obama's portrait for the National Portrait Gallery. I think Cara, having these connections, and we asked her to sit for a photo shoot, and there was something about this photo shoot that really changed our thinking. I think we took this very seriously because we had this national artist now that we were working with, and we brought Kelvin back in to do what Kelvin does best, which is make people look beautiful. And I think this was like a really big turning point for BmoreArt. We went back and forth, but I think really we were shooting for the cover for this. So at some point, this I think gave us this expansion of what BmoreArt could be from just a sort of like arts journal into like maybe a higher cultural moment in Baltimore. And we continue to expand on that, growing our covers to fashion designers and textile artists. On the left is Earl Bannister, and then on the right is I'm going to get her name wrong. Kabibi Njunku. Thank you. And then we didn't want to sway away far from our sort of like early beginnings with the Amy Bloom McCreesh covers, and we started hiring photographers that were really looking at these photo shoots and expanding their own art vocabulary. So on the left is Saskia Khan's photos from Houseworks, I believe. And then right is another photo from Jill Fannin from her Stem and Vine photo shoot. And then finally, we just never really wanted to sway away from art, but the art got a lot bigger and more inclusive, and I don't think that this will ever be, this will change, but I love these different covers because it sort of speaks to all the things that BmoreArt is about. The left is Graham Corley Allen's installation, Seasonal Turn, and to the right is Richard Cleaver's Lover's Eye. So I really liked, this collaborative process has been a really interesting thing for me as a designer, and really speaking to artists and writers and illustrators, and really trying to open up the way that I think about design, and like how I can be more open as a designer and think about things from different creative perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Ellen and Cara. This is, it's so much fun to talk about publications, and I'm really happy to be here at MICA because originally I came from Brazil to study with Ellen, do part of my PhD research here. So I'm really happy to be at MICA. I'm always happy to be here. So Cara asked you guys how many designers we had in the room. I'm curious to see how many artists we have in the room. Awesome. Yay, super. So tonight, I'm excited to talk to you about crafting artist books as a collaborative art. And I will start with the question like, so why does this matter, right? So I feel like if you're a designer, you might find yourself working on an artist book down the line, especially if you enjoy collaborating with artists. If you are an artist, you likely want to create a book that showcases your work. And maybe you're not an artist or a designer, but you're an art enthusiast or a collector. And
Or a
it's,
writer.
what a writer!
How many writers?
Amazing. Or all of the above, yes.
Writer.
Awesome. And we wanna, I feel like it's cool to learn how things are made. And books are teamwork. Like, you know, it's really hard to do a book by yourself, like completely by yourself, not meeting anyone else. So I wanna share with you a little bit of a process of making a specific book that that was created for BmoreArt. So over the past 20 years, I've had the pleasure of designing over 100 publications, and I'd like to highlight 4 recent books I created for BmoreArt. You can find them in with the Ivy Book shop table outside if you want to take a look. Our latest release, City of Artists, is a multi-year project that showcases the vibrant literary and visual arts community in Baltimore. And the other 3 are companions to exhibitions that happen at the BmoreArt Connect and Collect Gallery. BmoreArt is this platform for artists, and I started with as a blog. Cara started it at like more than 10 years ago. A million years ago. And then it became a website, the print journal, and we also have this gallery space in Charles Village that is also hosting exhibits. So the one that's showing up top right, it's Liberty and Injustice. Arcadia Futura is here. It's another exhibit we did in 2023. And this one is Post-Conception Benediction. Tonight I'll be focusing on this one, Post-Conception Benediction, which showcases the work of Adam Stabb and Jordan Tierney. Their art is really incredible. I highly recommend you to check them out. And if you're not familiar with them, I want to give you a quick overview. So Jordan, on the right-hand side, takes inspiration from Baltimore parks, streams, woods, and waterways. She uses materials and found objects from these places to create her mixed media collages and assemblages, adding a rich narrative layer to her work. Adam, on the left-hand side, pulls from the urban landscape of Baltimore City. He incorporates printed materials and detritus to inform his work. So here you see other pictures of Adam and Jordan. Adam is a self-taught artist with a significant career in street art. Both artists create works using found objects to make powerful statements about things like consumer culture, climate change, and environmental crisis. I'm excited to focus on this project because it highlights how collaborating closely with them can end up leading to something truly unique. So this is the book. It's interesting because I 100% agree with Ellen and Tony's, comments on creating the cover. It's always the last thing you do because you really want to learn about the topic that you're working on before you create the cover. But in this case, we started discussing how we could create a book that would bring something in the materiality that would be different, and we knew that it would be on the cover. So we started talking about the cover early on. It was a different, like, it was the, you know, exception. I feel like, compared to like all the other projects that the way that I usually do. So how did we create this book? I started by exploring and learning about the artists, their work, and the materials they use. Back in September 2022, I went with the BmoreArt team to their studios. Our first stop was Jordan's studio. It was an incredible experience for me. Jordan, the way Jordan organizes the materials she finds, it's really, truly amazing. She has all these drawers organized by like the type of items she finds, and it's really cool to see her navigating her space. Then the second stop was Adam's studio, and it was really cool spending time with both of them. I got to learn all about their materials and processes, and we started to bond. I think that that's really important in the process. Of course, not always you have the option of like really bonding with, let's say, the team, but it's important when that happens, because you are gonna be spending, usually when you're working with publications, you're spending a long time working with them. So after chatting with the artists about the idea of making a book together, I found myself wondering, how can we honor their process and create a book that feels like a found treasure? Because that's how their like work, I feel like that's the feeling I get from their work. So this is our gallery space in the Deutsche Foundation building in Charles Village. Please come check it out. So later in December that year, in 2022, the exhibition was installed. After visiting the studios, I had the chance to spend time with the work in the gallery. This photo shows the gallery space where I connected with the objects on display. I found some fascinating typography in the pieces, like this detail shot from one of Jordan's pieces, and also these collages by Adam. From this experience, I developed a visual identity for the show that would later be used for the book. I created a texture inspired by the typefaces I discovered in their works. It's a collage of typography that repeatedly spells out post, consumption, benediction. As we explored different materials for the cover, we initially considered actually options like metal, maybe repurposed metal that they found. We knew that we wanted to do a limited edition, so we were not expecting to use like a lot of material, but still finding all those material to be repurposed is, like, would be a short notice for doing that. So we figured that we could repurpose materials for layers that we could add on top of something else that we would use, and we decided to use wood. So working with this mix of texture typeface has got me thinking about the unique character of each letter and how they might later interact with the collages we're thinking about adding, setting the stage for the extra layers we plan to add. So instead of like really playing with digital collages, right, that we have multiple layers, we're trying to create this stage for something interesting to happen later. After deciding to use wood for the cover, our next step was finding vendors who could help to make this happen. So something that I feel like it's really fun about making publications is learning about printing processes and production process in general, and going to printing plants, going to maker spaces, learning about new machines, how you can make things, new things in different materials. So I think that's really fun, and I feel like that's part of the process. So after a few conversations, we connected with OpenWorks. I don't know if you're familiar with the space. Yay! They're really cool. They're located in Greenmount. They're this work maker space open to the community. You can do workshops, and they also do. You can contract them to support you. So if you don't know them, please check them out. And here's Zach Adams, who facilitated the project. Zach ran several tests for us, adjusting the machine speed and power to get just the right depth for the laser engraving. So on the left-hand side, you see like the different tests they ran, like they marked different speeds and power that I know nothing about. But then on the right-hand side, where you see the spine here, this was a fun part of the process. Like when we decided to use wood, originally we thought about doing like 2 pieces of wood that would be cut and connected to the first and the last page of the interior, like not, but without a spine. We would have like exposed spine. But because we're planning to attach the wood cover to the interior by hand, like it would be a manual process, it would be too laborious. So we, started thinking maybe if we just attach the back of the interior to the cover, we just need to figure out the spine. So I started, doing like YouTube searches, like how to do this and that, and it's amazing how much resources we have online nowadays. And I found this live-in hinge option, and OpenWorks was also really helpful, testing out like different spaces to see how much you would bend and how resistant it could be. Testing also included checking durability. I even threw a prototype in my backpack one day and walked from home to BmoreArt to see what would happen. Didn't go well, so it cracked. And we realized, okay, this is too fragile. We need to, work with a different dye to make it more durable. So finding the right wood thickness also became part of the process. Once we were happy with the concept, we focused on finalizing the interior. The interior was printed by a different vendor, by a print shop called Indigo Ink in Columbia, Maryland. Yay! They're awesome. So here are some spreads that you can see. We used the photo essays by Jill Fannon that were already commissioned by BmoreArt, so that really speed up the process, but we're repurposing them in a different way. And gallery documentation by Vivian Doring. So it's mailing a visual book with photos, short bios, and an introduction. Once we finalized the concept and cover work, we began the production phase. So this is a shot that OpenWorks provided. You see all the covers laser engraved, but not yet fully cut, because we thought that would be the first step after this was adding spray paint by Adam's tab, and we thought it would be, cooler to play with this before having with the final cut. Here's a look at an early test of Adam's spray painting, his initial layer on the covers. And after Adam added his spray layer, there was a second round of laser cutting at OpenWorks to separate all the covers. And then the covers traveled to Jordan's studio, where Jordan added the collaged elements. Here's a close-up of the collage. So there was some collage and then sanding, and then collage and sanding, so multiple layers. Next, Adam jumped back in. On top of Jordan's collages, he added handwritten details with permanent markers in different colors, especially this really cool yellow that really popped against the Jordan's work. And the final stage of production for the books was the BmoreArt team went back to Jordan's studio to do a teamwork, and in a group effort, we attached all the 60 interiors to the back of the wood covers.
Wow.
Yay! Yeah. Yes. Actually, this was the last step, adding forks. We added very cool forks that Jordan found in rivers in Baltimore, and she played with them and made them like unique. So that was actually the last part. So here you see a group picture with artists, our gallery manager, Inés Sanchez de Losada, who was fundamental for working with the artists and facilitating the process, and Cara Ober and Jeffrey Kent, who co-direct the gallery.
How many did you make?
We made 60 copies. We made available for we sold 50 of them and kept 10 for, for archive. And it was a really successful process of selling them. We got, from the beginning we started thinking who would be the audience for this, and we have a strong community that supports BmoreArt. Some of them are very interested in collecting art, and this is, as Cara says, is a gateway drug for collecting art, is collecting books, right? So we sold them out like in 3 months, and we did different price levels, like from the beginning until like the first 15, then we raised the price towards the end, and the book ended up selling really well. So feels that was successful. This is a cool detail. I'm highlighting these boxes here because one important but frequently missed detail is your books will eventually need to be shipped. So finding the right box size before you finalize the book's dimensions is key. I remember being on a tight schedule, rushing to give the final files to OpenWorks for cutting the covers, and suddenly Inés and I realized we needed to find shipping boxes that would fit the book. So it sounds minor, but shipping boxes can be surprisingly costly. So that really limited actually the size of the final book. And another often neglected aspect of book process is distribution. When working on small scale, you're usually very hands-on. So figuring out how to reach your audience directly is key. After we finished the book, we hosted several gallery events and talks to promote it, which ended up being really helpful in terms of sales. This book is now part of the special collections of the BMA, the Johns Hopkins Library, and MICA's Decker Library. So there's a copy here too. I'd like to share some final notes. It was a truly pleasure to work on this project. I really appreciate the whole freedom in a lot of ways that I have in BmoreArt for experimenting and doing this with the artists. And I'd like to share that building a strong collaborative community among artists, designers, and production teams, it's really important when you're doing something like this, right? So keep creating these connections is really key to make it work. And it's also important to consider the broader context in which our publications will live. Finding the right community for a book is crucial, from thinking about its physical form to how it will be archived and accessible to future readers. With this book, by integrating the artistic processes of Adam Stabb and Jordan Tierney, the book became more than a piece of documentation. It's truly an extension of their art. Thank you.
Comfortable. And we are going to keep this short. I know some people are standing, and if you want to kind of filter in, down front, that's fine. But Yeah, I knew they weren't gonna be 10 minutes long. And I didn't want them to be. I'm not in school anymore, so for me, it's such a treat to actually, have someone with great design skills and great ideas, deliver something that is planned. We do a lot of off the cuff and a lot of sort of panel discussions where I live, and that's fun too. But it's actually really a treat to have materials, prepared and delivered. And I think. We kind of came in with questions, and I think we've sort of, discussed a lot of the issues we came here to talk about. So I think it would be fine, actually, to open this up to people in the audience. I have plenty of questions if you don't, but do we want to do that? Do we have questions? Yeah, yes.
Hi, my name is Amita Shari. Ellen was my teacher about 20 years ago. I have a question for the panel, but I'm kind of geared towards Ellen. Ellen, since 20 years I was your student. As a designer and as an educator, I've seen a lot of change. My question for you and for the panel, if they want, is if you could take one design principle or tool, concept, theory, put it in a time capsule 20 years from now, that is of personal significance to you, what would it be? For me, for instance, it'd be the shift button and a list of shortcut commands.
The what?
The shift button and a list of shortcut commands.
That's deep. Well, Cara mentioned a quote, "Design is art people use." And I think I said that 20 years ago. So I dig that. I think that's still really useful. And I love that there's designers and artists and writers here. Be inclusive. Include everybody. Make your work make sense to everybody. That'd be in my time capsule. Thanks for your question. Thanks for coming back to MICA, man. That's great.
And then I think that's, part of the reason why we make the things that we make too. We're actually making the objects that we, I don't know where these magazines and books and publications are gonna be in 100 years, but some of them are still gonna exist, and in many cases they're gonna be, they may be the sort of definitive voice on what was happening at this time. So I think, just the books that we make, that would go in
That
my.
is a time capsule.
Yeah, they're sort of a time capsule in themselves.
Do you know your answer already?
Sure, yeah. I'm really interested in design and civility right now, and I like this idea of collaborative process, and I hope that this collaboration and community, and I hope that these ideas kind of push forward as we move into AI areas, right? I want to see how we can use AI to be more humane and more civil to each other. So hopefully in 20 years we'll see this point at which these collaborative things kind of fruited some sort of civility amongst ourselves, amongst each other.
So I feel like my answer is kind of tags on Cara's answer about the how publications probably will be still around us in 20 years. And I deeply feel that with all that's going on in the world around climate change and everything, being intentional about what you're producing, what you're making, to make sure that it makes sense for that thing to live in 20 years around us, just really be really intentional about what you're creating. I feel like that would be my answer. Anything that you put in the capsule, I hope it's worth it. Just make sure about that, yeah.
Anybody else? Yes?
I study creative writing at University of Baltimore, and I'm curious as to, do you really, does your artwork has to apply to the title, or can you just be creative with it?
You mean the title of a painting?
Of a book.
Of a book, yeah. Well, I think it's interesting, so many novels now have obscure titles that it says a novel under it, like A Girl's Guide to Fishing. a novel. You might think it was about fishing. But I think that's really up to the writer. I mean, Kafka called his novel Metamorphosis, and it was really about that. But lots of things, you know, you have to kind of scratch your head and figure it out. So be creative, I think. I always make my titles really obvious because I want people to find them on Amazon. So they always have the word design, and they usually have the word thinking. That's okay.
The artwork and the title of the book.
Oh, the artwork on the cover?
Yes, yes.
You know, I think one philosophy is that you don't want to replace the reader's imagination. So they often show like the back of somebody's head so that you can picture their face. You know? And I appreciate that. I think it can be very poetic. I don't think it has to be literal.
Okay.
But usually, like, most authors don't really have a say in a commercial contract.
Oh.
They don't usually get to be very involved in the cover because it would never, ever get done.
Okay.
Designers are probably glad that the author can.
Okay.
If you publish your own book, like y'all are doing, and you'll be right in there.
So,
Thank you.
We have a room with a lot of writers, designers, and artists, and these folks are sort of sitting at the intersection of what you all are doing. So I'm gonna pass it this way, but what do writers and visual artists not know about bookmaking, and what do they sort of not know about each other?
I'm writing about my question, nothing.
And like in regards to like making a book, because everybody wants to make books. Everybody's here because we love books. So what do the writers not know? What do the artists not know? And these guys, I mean, they work with me, and my background's in art, and I'm like, let's do this, and then they're like, no, that's not a thing. So there is some of that.
Yeah. So I think one thing that I work in a public institution. We're constantly thinking about audience, and I think that is one thing that I think even if you're working on something creatively and sort of yourself, to consider an audience for that, whether it's an audience that you're targeting or not targeting, to continually to think about who you're writing for, who you're designing for, where this thing is going to live in the world. Like, do you want it to be an edition of 50 book? Do you want it to be a mass market paperback? And really thinking about those things in your choices that you make as you're doing. I think we're constantly arguing both about poetry and like communication also between the two of us, like all the time. Like, it's a constant struggle for us to try to figure out how to be clear, which is something I really learned from Ellen, and like trying to be poetry, because we are, you know, we're all artists here, like in some fashion. So we all want to be poetry. We enjoy like simplistic things and things that may be a little obtuse or abstract or metaphors. And I don't know. I'm constantly struggling between communication and that.
So something that I'd like to share about Cara's question is I feel like, as Ellen mentioned before, everybody has an idea for a book, and it's cool. Like, you know, there are a lot of cool ideas. I think that being interested in learning about all the process of making a book, and that's what we're talking about here, like the process of making a publication, the backstage, like be interested in learning about the chain, because there's a book chain, you know, that starts with an idea, the writer, but then there's the editor, the copy editor, the publisher, the bookseller, you know, like there's all these people involved to make something happen and to make it, you make the book get to their audience. And there's the reader also, obviously, you know, there's that's key to the process, right? Of like thinking about the reader and who's gonna enjoy and navigate that object that you're creating their own way. So I think that being interested in learning about that and learning that I have an idea for, sometimes people tell me, I have this book that I wrote, and I feel like there's this amazing author that I love that says, his name is Roger Chartier, he's French, he says, writers, they don't write books, they write manuscripts that will become books after, you know, there's a long process of making that happen. So I think just acknowledging the materiality of what you're creating, I think it's key. Yeah.
When we created the first BmoreArt journal was in 2015, and I had only published online. I had published things online for different magazines and for BmoreArt, and we finally we did the thing. We got all the artists and all the writers and the photographers and the designer and the table of contents and all of the editing, and it was a lot. And finally, we get to the stage where it's going to be printed, and my husband is like, "Where are you putting them? You've got 3,000 magazines coming." He's like, "They're not coming to our house." So thinking about the materiality, who's going to consume it, how will they consume it, and then for me, since 2015, it has been this amazing relationship building process working with our booksellers. I mean, bookshops are the most, amazing places. And did anyone else read the article about you can Airbnb, working in a bookshop as your vacation? Google that. That is a thing. It's like this fantasy that people have, running their own bookshop. So we can ask questions of our booksellers if it's really that much of a fantasy, but I think we can all agree that they are wonderful, wonderful, magical businesses, and we're so lucky to have so many of them here in Baltimore. So, the only reason that nice things exist is because we choose to support them. So I hope that people support all the nice things that you all make, and whenever given the opportunity, I hope you will do that for us as well. Do we have any other? And okay, one more. Oh, I see 2 hands in the back. Was that the same person or 2 different people? It looked like someone. Okay, I see 1 hand. Did you want to just yell?
Yeah, hi, my name's Isla. I was just wondering if design and capitalism are closely linked, which I agree with. Can you speak to the challenges designers face when art challenges capitalism?
Yeah. No, you don't want that. Because that is what artists are supposed to do, right? Yeah. That is the very definition of the art, to ask the questions that disrupt, right? They disrupt the patterns. So.
Yeah, but I like to sell my books. You also sold 50 copies of the book with the fork on it. Yeah, that's good. And even the way you described raising the prices as the supply diminished, the book became more expensive. That's capitalism. So I think capitalism is a big, scary word. It is the system that we live in, and I think there are ways to create good things within it and support artists and writers and get people paid to do their work and create value in the world. So I think we all got to challenge it, but also find ways to live with it and thrive and help each other thrive, which I think you're really doing with the art world here in Baltimore, helping it thrive. Another question?
Oh, last one. I hope it won't be offensive. My name is Delia, and are you worried that later on during the future that AI will take over the cover design? Even though AI right now is not forming designs that you want, it's just every time you.
It's already being used to design book covers. So lots of independently published things. Any writer can go on Amazon and publish their own book through the Amazon self-publishing platform, and you can do very well there and reach an audience with fan fiction and all kinds of stuff. And those writers are using AI to design their covers, and they're getting covers that they like. These authors, they like it, their readers like it, so it's already happening.
It still doesn't look good.
Well, not to most of us. But if you're writing a book about Harry Potter's grandson getting married to a werewolf, AI can totally design that cover.
Any
comment on your question. I feel like there is space for all kinds of designs, right? So there's a space for the AI design cover, and I think the challenge for designers is to find their voice in a way that they're like creating something that makes sense and connecting with their community. Because I feel like that's really important. If you can connect with a community that makes sense to you, it's hard to find an AI that's gonna replace that. So it seemed like, try to find that for you. Yeah.
Are we gonna be done? We done? I'll be quick, okay. I am kind of a snobby person, so I like nice things. And I just haven't seen good AI yet. And I would continue to advocate to be selective about what you choose to buy with your money as a capitalist or living in a capitalistic system. And hopefully that will send a message to the generative people that make these things, and that will, it'll never go away, but I think there will be ways to just be more selective about what you're consuming. I think we'll be done with questions, but we're gonna stick around for, you really, I feel you really, okay. Okay. Yes, quick.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So as someone who's studying design, I find myself going to the library looking at publications like books or magazines, but also in my free time, I'm on social media and I see a lot of education through social media such as Instagram and YouTube. There's a lot of educators on there now, or just people who are in the field. So my curiosity and my question to you guys is, how are you guys navigating through that in terms of advertising your products as well as just adapting to this?
How we're navigating.
Yeah, we do it.
Social media.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a tool, it's a platform for communication, so if you know how to play the game and you kind of test, I mean, it's immediate. I mean, you can see how it's doing, you can see how it functions with this specific audience for this specific platform, so it's not real life. If someone likes my thing that I put on a thing, I don't, that's not real, but it is an effective tool.
Yeah, I'm glad everybody saw AIGA's social media post this week and came to MICA. Okay, so thank you. It's awesome. Thanks for coming. We got beautiful book table out there if you want to buy something or just touch the merch. It's all cool.